Yes.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Thanks for letting me know. And the recording has begun. So welcome and hello, everybody. Welcome to this 2-hour webinar on partnering with immigrant families to promote student success for leaders and educators. Thank you all for being in the space today. And I've already mentioned this before, but I'm just going to say it again. I'd like to give everybody a heads up to note that all of this is going to be recorded. If you have to leave in the middle, I've heard from several folks that might not have time today to do the whole 2-hour session. If you have to leave in the middle of it, or if you like to go somewhere and then hop back on, totally okay. And we will be sharing this with folks later on as well. So just a heads up to let everybody know that. Okay. So I want to begin today by introducing myself, our team here today, and our organization as a whole. While I'm introducing myself, feel free to type in the chat your name, title, school district, and community as indicated on the slide before you, as well as your experience with any newcomer families today. We would love to hear from where you're listening in from. So to begin to introduce myself, my name is Ann Tang. I use she, they pronouns, and I am a senior trainer and family engagement manager for the Federation for Children with Special Needs. I currently live in Boston, specifically in the Allston area, but I've also lived in Western Massachusetts for 5 years, as well as California and Taiwan. I am a Taiwanese person with glasses and medium-ish black hair. My current Zoom background is a little bit of white and a little bit of brown. Everything is blurred. I identify as an immigrant and an F1 visa holder. I also, in the past, was a lawful permanent resident or green card holder. And my professional background is in public policy and education. It is very nice to meet everybody today. I am joined here today with Mahima. If Mahima, you have the capacity to unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mahima Gupta. I am a project associate with a program at the Federation called the Caregiver to Caregiver Respite Network. I use she, her pronouns, and I currently live in Boston, but also lived in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts too. I am from India with long black hair. My current Zoom background is the C2C background with like a brown backdrop. I also identify as an immigrant and an F1 visa holder. And my professional background is pretty similar to Anne, which is education and public policy. It is very nice to meet all of you too.
Thank you, Mahima. Mahima is going to be here today as a co-facilitator. So while I'm presenting, she's going to be reading off the comments in the chat, just monitoring everything, and also assisting with some text. So you'll see a lot of her today. So before I jump into the chat and read off some hellos that we've been saying, I'll give everybody a brief overview of what our organization is. So FCSN is an umbrella organization for many, many different programs that support families. And we're best known for our work in supporting special education families to navigate the special education process and everybody's roles within it. Over time, we have built on this expertise to become more than that and becoming a resource on family engagement issues affecting all families, and particularly not only those with children with disabilities, but also immigrant families, bilingual families. We also do a series of trainings on improving family engagement practices in schools and also community-based organizations. So I'd love to hear some folks if they like to mute and see where everybody is coming from. But aside from that, I will also be reading a couple of things out in the chat, just to give everybody a general idea of who we are and why we're here today. You might see me looking from screen to screen. It's because I am a person of multiple screens. So my intention is a little bit in between both screens. So we have folks from New Bedford. We have folks in Cambridge, folks in Fitchburg and Lowell. We have folks from Everett. More than one person from Everett, from Malden, from Ashland, from Hopedale, Chelsea, Westboro, Lowell again. Wow, a lot of folks from Lowell today. All right, Wilmington, and there's more coming in as well. So thank you all for being here, and I'm excited to get to know more of you in this afternoon. We're going on to our next slide. So this is a slide of an agenda. Today, we will be focusing on family engagement in the perspective of immigrant families and what that means to student success. So we will begin with an analysis of family engagements and an explanation of some shared terminology. We will then dive into challenges faced by immigrant families, educators and leaders, and also family framework tools. To end our time here together, we close with an analysis of best practices for partnering with families, solutions for stakeholders, and also a call to action. This webinar will have interactive elements to it so that we can all work together and hear everybody's voices. So feel free to also type into the chat any questions that you may have during this time. Mahima and I will be monitoring this chat and also putting in links occasionally for folks to look at. And yeah, let's begin. So we begin with discussing family engagement. Who are we talking about when we speak of family engagements? When we refer to families, we are speaking about parents, guardians, and student supporters. It is important to also consider collaboration and engagement of student learning with all available aspects of a student's backgrounds and supporters, including the students themselves. This is especially critical regarding students that are unaccompanied minors. The word families, quote unquote, is an umbrella term that may look different depending on a student's background, especially in the case of newcomer families and also immigrant students. Understanding that there are different types of family backgrounds is important to reflection about student success, as well as this quote that we see here together on this slide. So let's examine the slide a little bit more critically. Before we begin to think about how our work is being perceived by immigrant families, we also need to take a moment to absorb again the importance of family engagement for student success. So I would like to invite everybody to consider this following quote by Dr. Karen Mapp. She says, "Our goal is to motivate a transparent, honest, and thoughtful interrogation of what stands in the way of authentic partnership between families and schools, and to show the way toward a more liberatory, solidarity-driven, and equity-focused family engagement practice that supports educational excellence for all children." I'm going to let that sink in for a hot second because it was quite a long quote. So this quote is taken from her writing in this is a very long title, but Embracing a New Normal Toward a More Liberatory Approach to Family Engagement report with E.L. Bergman for the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Our discussion here today in this entire webinar is going to be a deep dive into this 2023 Carnegie report that you can access through the QR code above, as well as something that Mahima is going to be putting into the chat. It is the same name as our presentation, so there is absolutely no confusion there. And aside from these quotes, you will also be hearing of examples and terms also from the report here today, so that everybody is on the same page. Okay. I want to emphasize that we are here today because we want to bridge the gap between our immigrant families and also our school systems. We're united for one purpose, and that is to reach and improve student success. So I'm here to present to you researched and collected information on what family engagement, student success, and partnership means, especially in the context of my own immigrant background and upbringing. But you are also ultimately the expert of your own districts, classrooms, schools, and also your cultures around your community. So we are coming here today from all over Massachusetts, as we've seen from the introductions that we've done earlier. So I'm also looking to you as well as your expertise on how you are interacting with your students and also your families. This is a space to share knowledge, and this sort of learning is also a two-way street. So let's take a moment to put in the chat a word that you resonate with this quote. We already know that research has shown us for decades the importance of family engagement to student success. But in seeing this quote in particular, what stands out for you? What words come up for you as you think about your own efforts to engage with your families, and particularly immigrant families? How do you feel about it? And I just want to give everybody a minute to just pause, think about the quote, and just put in a word that really resonates with them into the chat before we move on. For example, my word that I personally really resonate with in this quote is transparent. It's not often that we see transparency as something that is particularly amplified when we're thinking about school systems or systems in general, alongside with communication with families. So this is something that I think personally I am really emphasizing so that we can all achieve. I'm going to read off a couple of comments. Cambria says liberatory. Mary says solidarity driven. Johnny says authentic partnerships lead to building trust. Completely agree. And Catherine says equity-focused family engagements. Very, very true. All right. We'll move on from here to the next slide. So these are a lot of words, but we're going to go through everything together. Let's take a moment on this slide. You'll see a chart to absorb some terms that will be important to discussing immigration and also newcomer families. So while we will be using the term quote unquote newcomer families as an umbrella term for all folks that are going through this process of immigration and being in a new space, it is critical to also regard these terms and have a general understanding of immigration, not only for knowing the terms themselves, but also for understanding context. Some of these terms may be very familiar to you, but others may be quite new. And just to make sure that everybody is in the same space and on the same page about everything, we're just going to go through it all together. So we're beginning with the left, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA. This is an administrative relief program that protects from deportation and provides a work permit to eligible individuals who migrated to the U.S. as children. DACA recipients are sometimes referred to as DACamented. To the bottom of that, we have immigrant family. This is any family with at least one parent born outside the country of residence. To our right column, at the very top, we have temporary protected status. This is a temporary benefit granted to eligible foreign-born individuals who cannot return safely to their country of origin due to an ongoing armed conflict, environmental disaster, epidemic, or other extraordinary and temporary condition. TPS holders are protected from deportation based on immigration status and are eligible for employment and travel authorization. Lastly, at the bottom, we have lawful permanent residence. This is a foreign-born individual who has been granted the right to reside permanently in the U.S. Lawful permanent residents are also known as permanent resident aliens and green card holders. I have mentioned this term before as well. So these are 4. We're going to introduce in the next slide 4 more. And in order to make sure that folks, have access to all of these terms, I just want to point out also that the link Mahima shared before with the report, you can access all of these terms in the first couple of pages if you want to look over them again at any point throughout the presentation. On the next slide, to the very, very left at the top, we have mixed status family. This is a family whose members have different legal statuses, including undocumented immigrants, DACA recipients, TPS holders, lawful permanent residents, and US citizens. So it could be anybody. And this list is not exhaustive. On the bottom of that, we have unaccompanied minor. This is an individual under the age of 18 who entered the US without lawful status and without an accompanying parent or legal guardian. To our right at the top, we have refugee family. These are migrants seeking entry into a country who can demonstrate that they have been persecuted or have reason to fear persecution on the basis of 1 to 5 protected grounds. Number 1, race. Number 2, religion. Number 3, nationality, political opinion, and 5, membership in a particular social group. Lastly, at the very bottom, we have undocumented immigrant. And this is an individual residing in a given country without legal documentation. Undocumented immigrants include people who entered the US without inspection and proper permission from the government, and those who entered with a legal visa that is no longer valid. So, it is important to note that while students may have immigrated from the same areas, as you may be seeing from incoming waves of newcomers, their statuses may be completely different. For example, 2 newcomer migrant students currently in a motel in Woburn may be from Haiti, but one may be an unaccompanied minor, and the other may have a mixed family status. Additionally, if a refugee family from Syria living in Brockton may have documentation while another family may be undocumented, those are different contexts as well. A DACA recipient from a Chinese family living in Arlington will also be going through different status considerations and traumatic experiences and context, depending on whether they have either a mixed status family, or have family members that already hold green cards. So all of these really represent different factors that can play into how we view partnerships with families, how we view communication with families, and what family engagement means in all of these different contexts. So now we're going to move on to the next slide with significantly different and significantly less words. We present a question to everybody here today. As school leaders and educators, we know that we need to build a partnership between our families and also our teams. So if we're going to build that partnership and team, we knew that families need to learn and understand a lot about school systems. So I'd like to invite everybody to consider the question on the slide. What do immigrant families need to know to be informed partners in their children's education? So this question is what we're all asking ourselves as often as we think about what our next steps are in including immigrant families in conversations. But I'd also like to invite everybody to think about this question in a different way. What do school leaders and educators need to know to be informed partners in immigrant children's education? This is really where the work begins, because to discuss the lack of partnership between immigrant families and school systems through the lens of what we need to know about immigrant families, not the other way around, is critical phrasing in order to level the playing field and also the power dynamics of how immigrant families face different challenges in the midst of new terms, foreign systems, unfamiliar faces, and many more aside from that. Now we are looking at a different slide with bullet points. The title is Challenges Faced by Immigrant Families, and you will see an image of two people on the screen above you. So as brought up by the Carnegie reports that we are referencing today, the slide that you see is a collection of all of these challenges. We have cultural challenges, language barriers, limited resources, undocumented immigration status, anti-immigrant climate, the pandemic, and an unaccompanied youth as cited challenges by the report. There are plenty more out there, and I also invite you to post in the chat things that you can think of aside from the ones that we're listing out today. But we're going to go through these before we move on. In terms of cultural differences, immigrant communities, as we all know, are not monolithic, as demonstrated by the examples that we brought up when we were talking about shared terminology. An example that the report itself brings up is that a naturalized Chinese family will have different cultural backgrounds and experiences from an undocumented Honduran family. And the cultural differences that they in turn face will be challenging in different ways, in terms of how to adapt to new societal norms, and also understanding local community values. So this may cause a cultural misalignment, especially when we are considering ways to organize classrooms and speak to newcomer students and families. One of the other more obvious challenges that are faced by immigrant families is language barriers, as we all probably know by this point. So some students may arrive not knowing English, and some may. And aside from this, there is also that consideration of where parents and guardians are at in the English comfort and the fluency. This discomfort that comes with not understanding English fluently of all members of the family may limit them in terms of what resources they already access and already know about. For example, families may not know of free resources of the Boston libraries, such as English courses, arts and crafts events for kids, and also passes to museums because they cannot read the library brochures or ask questions fluently at the front desk enough to find out. So this brings us to limited resources. Aside from language barriers, preventing families from accessing resources, immigrant families may also experience limited access because they are more likely than US citizens to live in low income or working class neighborhoods. They are therefore more likely to also experience lower wages, hazardous jobs, limited education opportunities, as well as job insecurity, especially if a community has come to the States at the same time in the same wave. There may not be enough established connections in the area for folks to be able to access home and job security. You may also interact with families that are facing challenges from their own immigration status. So issues like that include worries of deportation, stress from family separation, and alienation from their communities due to stress about their legal status. Even if we are coming to them and letting them know about opportunities for us to help them, such as Q&A events that folks might be hosting, they may not want to interact with us, especially if events are in official buildings, due to fear of folks using their status against them. So families may not know who to trust necessarily, even if we present them with a welcoming environment and a welcoming attitude. They may not also seek help due to this worry and miss out, therefore, on health, social services, academic opportunities, and even all of this despite their children possibly already being US citizens. So this challenge will cause both mental and financial strain on families. We also, of course, cannot talk about immigration statuses without discussing anti-immigrant climate. The US, as we know, has a very long history of immigrant discrimination in which the law and the people will welcome some families, but also discriminate against others, particularly immigrants of color and of lower socioeconomic status. This rhetoric increases the chances of bullying and harassment as well, not only for families, but also for folks within the classrooms. The pandemic, second to lastly, has not been kind, folks, and this is evident in immigrant circles as well. as many immigrant families work frontline jobs that have a lot of in-person contact, such as healthcare, agriculture, retail, and also transportation. They are more likely to have dangerous exposure to COVID. Immigrants often do not have Social Security numbers and are therefore excluded from federal stimulus checks provided through the CARES Act, which you can read about through the link that Mahima is going to send as well, if you're interested. And lastly, there are also unaccompanied youth that are released to sponsors within Massachusetts and enrolled in schools. They may be fleeing from violence or seeking better job opportunities. Due to challenges such as traveling alone and integrating into the culture, unaccompanied youth may have socioeconomic, socio-emotional, health, and academic needs that are unmet. Educators may find that they have a difficult time connecting with such students and their sponsor families because there's typically already this existing disconnect, this gap, an emotional gap between the two in the household already. I'm going to switch over to the next slide. So now, how do these challenges look like when we shift our focus to what immigrant families encounter within the school environment? It's crucial to acknowledge that, as we have analyzed in the slide before this, that these hurdles often extend beyond the walls of the classroom, and student success is heavily impacted by how communication goes between the schools and also the families. So the impact of cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic disparities can significantly alter and affect the educational experiences of all of these immigrant students. Starting with cultural differences again. Schools serve as microcosms of broader society, and the need for cultural sensitivity is paramount. So we must navigate these diverse cultural backgrounds within immigrant communities, ensuring that teaching methods within classroom policies respect and also reflect the varied perspectives that these families will bring. We will talk about this later as well. In terms of language barriers, they already persist as a significant challenge within school systems. For immigrant students, language proficiency directly influences their academic success and social integration, both of which are important to also their SEL. Schools need to implement comprehensive language support systems, recognizing the varying levels of language proficiency among both students and also their parents. In terms of limited resources, they continue to pose challenges within this educational landscape because immigrant families that often reside in economically disadvantaged areas may face difficulties accessing educational resources. Extracurricular activities, which is also vital for SEL, future opportunities, as well as advanced coursework. And bridging this resource gap is essential to fostering equitable educational opportunities. Addressing immigration status related issues within schools is also crucial. Fear of deportation, concerns about legal status, these can all create stressful environments for students and their families, particularly hindering academic engagement. So we must strive to be these safe spaces, providing support and resources regardless of immigration status. In thinking of this, we'll really have to put ourselves in the family's shoes regarding their fears and also the context that we have mentioned before. If folks don't have Social Security numbers or come without their paperwork, what are their rights to schooling, and how do we invite them into spaces while considering the discomfort that they may be facing about entering official buildings? And in thinking of that, we talk again about anti-immigrant climates. This extends into schools, particularly impacting the overall school environment, and it's imperative for educators to create inclusive and welcoming spaces that are free from discrimination. This involves promoting diversity in curricula, encouraging open dialogue, and also actively combating any instances of bullying or harassment. The pandemic as well has brought additional challenges to the forefront. Remote learning exacerbates existing disparities, particularly for families without access to necessary technology. So schools must implement strategies to ensure equitable access to education, regardless of a school's and a student's background or circumstances. Unaccompanied youth also entering schools face a unique set of challenges that I'd like to highlight. Educators must be attuned into their socio-emotional needs, providing support to help them integrate into the school community. Building connections and understanding their journey and the context of their journey is essential for creating this positive and inclusive learning environment. We'll be moving on right now to the next slide. But before we do that, actually, I'm going to share our activity that we're going to be doing together. Let's take this moment to separate into breakout rooms to discuss with peers what these challenges look like in school settings in particular. And during our time together, folks will be sorted into randomized groups and may encounter other folks from different school districts. Within each group, please assign a scribe to take notes on your discussion. We'll be sharing a Jamboard in a minute as well with everybody so that everybody can place their notes in the shared space. We'll then circle back after around 10 to 15-ish minutes to discuss together in the main room. I'm just going to say the instructions again so that it's a little clearer. So in breakout rooms, I would like folks to please introduce yourselves to each other, assign a scribe, and then share your thoughts together on the Jamboard, and to pick out one or two of these challenges and the bullet points to discuss. So we're looking for examples of any of your own experiences with these challenges, or if you'd like to propose new questions regarding what we talked about earlier, or just the bullet points in general, that would be amazing as well. So we're looking at all of these challenges currently from the perspective of immigrant families, not necessarily from the schools themselves, purely of immigrant families. One thing to note is that when you're writing down notes on the Jamboard that we'll be sharing, please write down your name and your district so that we can follow up with you if you would like support from FCSN on any issues that you're sharing or you're possibly facing. I am going to stop sharing in a little bit so that we can all just sort ourselves into breakout rooms. And I will be sharing the slides as well later if folks want to come back and look at them. But I will also be staying in the main room with our team so that I can monitor the time. So folks, again, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much time folks think that they'll need. I'll be checking in regularly. So I'm suggesting maybe around 5 minutes for introductions to get to know each other. And then another 10 to 15-ish if we need to for the content. And we'll readjust if we need more time. Thanks, Mahima.
Should we pause the recording while people are away?
That's a great idea. It was a good discussion. Thank you for whoever started the recording again. I hope that was a great discussion. And there will be at least one more opportunity for folks to just get in a group together and connect. Either if you want to network and figure out more, communication methods, this and that. A lot of time for that later as well. But thank you for sharing your thoughts. I see a bunch of notes on the Jamboard, and I am excited to read through them together with everybody. If it is possible, Mahima, I would love to see the Jamboard from your screen because my tech currently is slightly limited. But if it's possible to just kind of show the Jamboard really quickly, that would be amazing. So
Just
we can all
one
just kind
second, if
of,
that's okay.
yeah, no worries. We can all just look at a couple of notes together. And if folks would like to volunteer to speak up about how their group's discussion was, that would also be greatly appreciated. I'm just going to give everybody a minute to see if y'all would like to volunteer your voice for us today.
I can chime in and just, I know somebody checked in with our group, sorry, and I couldn't get my mute was stuck, though I wasn't able to speak to the person, so I don't think we're in the Jamboard, but our group talked about, we were in agreement of the language barrier being a challenging piece. That I have seen a lot of immigrant students often, miss instruction and learning due to the language barrier, and it causes repeat grades, sometimes more than once. And also, there's just not enough support and resources within the classrooms to be able to bridge that gap of the translation and the language barrier. But the unaccompanied student, oftentimes I would see increased rates of absenteeism. I have teenagers myself, so it's not surprising to me if there's not a caregiver there kind of, prompting you or supporting you to get up and go to school. It would be really easy to avoid that. As well as, I think you had mentioned this earlier, just, being able to work and make money. A lot of these immigrants, students are supporting their families financially so that they see that paycheck coming in, and if they can work during school hours and they take those hours and they do that, and or they work so many hours that it interferes with their studies, so they're just too tired to wake up and come to school.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Those are really, really great points that we haven't mentioned in the presentation yet. And for sure, I see that somebody has helped put absenteeism in there. I think there are a couple more as well that were just added while you were talking. This is really informative. I think it really helps bring a visual and also a story to what immigrant students are going through, particularly newcomer students. So thank you for your voice. Is there anybody else that also like to speak up on things that they've discussed in their groups?
Hi, I'm Melissa Fonseca from the Madeline English. I'm a Portuguese liaison. In our group, we discussed, I think like main thing, it kind of reverts to what is being said, like the cultural differences and the language barriers are a huge thing. I mean, especially for students that are coming in and don't understand like how the system truly works. It can be very challenging for them and cause like, several what we would say is disruptive behavior, but in tune, it's just that they are not properly adjusting. I thought that it would be great if we could have more liaisons, or we could have, more educators that are of a bilingual standard to just kind of understand these cultural differences.
Of course, and thank you, Melissa, for sharing. What I'm hearing so far is that the cultural differences and the language barriers elements are really, really noticeable, especially in our positions. And they bring a lot of issues up, such as what we've been discussing, participation, which is critical for students to keep on going, and is critical for changing families' mindsets on the importance of academics, which is not often always discussed because of pre-existing needs for accessing basic needs that folks might not already have access to. Is there anybody else that would also like to speak up? I'm going to, while we're waiting to see if any folks would also like to speak, read out loud a couple of the notes that folks have put into the Jamboard. Understanding systems is challenging. Absenteeism, as we've discussed earlier, over-identifying students as having challenges, academic, social, emotional, etc., of course. There's also challenges getting in-person interpretation. Unaccompanied minors, without parents have trouble accessing doctor's appointments and other basics. Cultural barriers and norms, expectations from families, interrupted education challenges, limited resource such as families being unable to come up with first and last month's rent, fear of deportation, people understanding the historical struggles of these children, looking for efficiency so we can help more families, working with community agencies to better connect, hotels closing and consolidating multiple moves, transportation issues, as well as language barriers in general. These are all really great points. Thank you so much for sharing. There will be, as I mentioned before, space later to connect with each other and to look at these a little bit closer. So I am going to request Mahima sharing access again so we can continue looking at the other slides left in the presentation. Give me a hot second while I work out this technology. All right. Is that in full screen for folks?
No.
Okay, let me make that a little bigger. I think we were right here.
We were
Okay.
on slide
Oh.
11.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go all the way over. There we go. Does that look okay for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, I see some nods. Amazing. Okay. So once again, thank you all for your input. This is all so incredibly insightful. Knowing the challenges to families in specific school districts and knowing the challenges that we've just spoken about earlier, let's lay them side by side with challenges that educators and leaders may face. So we were urgently attempting to look at this issue from the perspective of families. Now let's recalibrate and look at it from the perspective of us as educators and leaders. What strategies facilitate communication and mutual support between families and educators? This is the question that is laid out in a little gray box to the right of the screen. And to the left of the screen, you'll see bullet points of topics that we've discussed earlier. And let's look at this question a little bit more too. How many of these factors can be categorized and related to the challenges that families face and that we have discussed so far? What factors contribute to this breakdown in communication, this potential breakdown that we've already been seeing happening between families and educators and leaders? While we're discussing and just kind of reflecting on these questions, we're now going to take a look at all of these issues from looking at the context, the whole structural context of how newcomer families are coming into the States, to thinking about the challenges that families are facing, discussing these challenges, and then flipping the situation around to view this as educators and leaders, to thinking about a more solutions-based approach to our presentation today. I am moving on to the next slide. You will see an image that is large, filled with tiny little words that we can discuss later. The title is Family Engagement Frameworks. To the right of this image, you will see 4 points bolded that we will be discussing. So let's talk about this a little bit. Now that we've discussed the context of these challenges, we should consider the family engagement frameworks that can guide us toward more transformative solutions. And since engaging with families is merely not necessarily just about, meeting that inclusivity benchmark and fostering And it's more so about fostering this sense of genuine belonging within our school communities. Let's consider tools like this family engagement framework let's think about it as like a compass. Let's consider this like a compass to guide the establishment of partnerships between educators and families. And aside from utilizing the core of this framework, there should also be a lot of flexibility in adapting it so that we can work out the structure for specific districts and specific schools themselves. The dual capacity framework, the image that you see right now, is designed by Dr. Mapp and E.L. Bergman, and it serves as a strategic foundation that streamlines this whole process of enhancing the capabilities of both educators and also families. Its goal is to acknowledge that achieving meaningful family engagement means that practices must transcend formalities. And this should really be built on a foundation of trust, directly linked to students' educational pursuits, asset-oriented, culturally sensitive and sustainable, collaborative, and also interactive. The significance of institutional factors is underscored so that it advocates for a systemic approach that is embraced at all levels of leadership. And this is integrated into organizational strategies and sustained with the appropriate resources. And 4 key components you'll see at the very right is everything bolded. Number 1, educator professional development. Number 2, parent and family empowerment. Number 3, collaborative activities. And lastly, number 4, systemic conditions. And while we're discussing this, I'd like to also bring up that the Massachusetts Family Engagement Framework from DESE itself is also derived from and aligns with the dual capacity framework that we're focusing on today. This framework, like everything else that we've mentioned so far today, can also be found referenced in the report that we're doing a big deep dive from. Dr. Mapp has also built a website titled the Dual Capacity Building Framework. So if you Google that, you can also find a more in-depth conversation, as well as a detailed and aligned context and also action items that folks have been using to implement the dual capacity building framework into their schools, as well as the system as a whole. So we'll be speaking on this in future seminars, as well as the Massachusetts framework. And to read more, I will invite you also to visit the link in the chat that Mahima is going to be putting in. It's called Strengthening Partnerships, a Framework for Prenatal through Young Adulthood Family Engagement in Massachusetts. If you take a little look at that, you'll see a lot of information and context I've been building up to before. So let's take a little look more while you're looking at the links about what we see on the right of the screen. In terms of professional development for educators, for any education leaders that are here today, this aspect focuses on building the capacity of educators to engage effectively with families, and it includes training and developmental opportunities to help us understand the diverse needs of families, develop communication skills, and also create an inclusive and welcoming environment. So this webinar is a part of it, and it's also a series of a couple more that we're building at FCSN to include newcomer families in conversations. When you were registering for this particular seminar, you would have probably also seen the rest of them. They are still open for registration. This, of course, is an introduction to the entirety of the conversation that we're building up to for the rest of the year. So this is a beginner's intro. This is, really the foundation of the network that we're building and the understanding of context. And the ones that are coming inwards will be going more in depth about things such as cultural brokers, how to engage with PACs, and how all of these resources align in welcoming newcomer families in different ways. Next, we have parent and family empowerment. And this component includes empowering parents and families with the knowledge, skills, and confidence to actively support their children's learning. It includes resources, providing information, and also opportunities for families to be involved in their children's education. Thirdly, collaborative activities is something that the framework encourages that brings together educators, families, but holistically also community members. These activities can include workshops, meetings, events, or different initiatives that y'all can think of that also foster the sense of positive relationship building and, more importantly, mutual understanding, which is really what we're aiming to do today. Lastly, on systemic conditions. This model that you see before you really emphasizes this importance on creating the systemic condition that supports, but also more importantly, sustains family and community engagement. And this involves aligning policies, resources, practices across the entire educational system. While I realize this is ambitious, doesn't mean that it's impossible. To ensure that family engagement is an integral part of educational culture. So this is a general understanding of the dual capacity building framework in the context of family engagement as a whole. We are going to be moving on to the next slide. You will be seeing a title called Dual Capacity Framework. Under that is a subtitle called Process Conditions with a series of bullet points that we're going to go through and an image of hands holding each other. So let's apply this more specifically to the context of immigrant families. We've explained the framework and now we're going to talk about it more specifically. Steps from the framework are all built, again, on this foundation of trust. And without it, it will be extremely difficult to establish relationships and work on collaborative activities for students. And navigating trust with marginalized families and communities, particularly those that have faced discrimination, will present a challenge. Immigrant families in particular may carry a history of negative interactions with U.S. institutions, making trust building this very delicate process. Undocumented immigrants fearing the potential repercussions of disclosing their immigration statuses may often approach schools, which I mentioned before, with a lot of caution, hindering the establishment of this collaborative relationship that you might be trying to build. And for good reason. All of these fears and cautions are here because of built experience and because of this fear that, they won't be welcomed and accepted with open arms. So building trust in such circumstances requires educators to, really go above and beyond. And I mentioned this before, but this really isn't to say that it's impossible. But beyond the self-reflection on beliefs and assumptions that we're all here trying to do, we must also actively demonstrate this commitment to valuing and also caring for immigrant families. And this involves taking the time to understand their unique backgrounds, which we've already established, understanding this context, engaging them in meaningful conversations, sometimes outside of, academics and schoolwork. Genuinely inquiring about the resources and information that they require a lot of the times, especially right now, pertaining to basic needs. And anything that indicates an open invite to connect, such as, an open door policy, just any little thing is already extremely helpful. But to foster this trust, schools can extend their support beyond educational manners. So by connecting immigrant families with resources addressing non-educational needs, such as access to healthcare, clothing, and housing assistance, we demonstrate this holistic commitment to the well-being of the entire family. And through these actions, we can gradually begin to break down these barriers and create a foundation of trust to lay down the groundwork for this collaborative and supportive environment for immigrant students and their families. The building of trust is of mutual trust, and not just trust itself, is the relational aspect of process conditions that are necessary to utilize this dual capacity framework model. Now let's talk a little bit more about what learning and development looks like. Families do want to be involved in their children's education and support them, but the various challenges that we've outlined before and that you've spoken of during your breakout room sessions have may really impact a family's ability and capacity to do so without outside support and guidance. So for example, I'm sure folks have talked about this in the breakout rooms as well, but immigrants with limited English proficiency can support their students better when school programs are designed to help them go through this challenge. And this really goes beyond just translating and interpreting materials, because we play this pivotal role in articulating programs, services, and resources that can optimally support student learning, and also recognize the unique developmental needs of children in which immigrant families is critical. And there is really no one-size-fits-all sort of approach that can support the needs of immigrant students due to reasons such as the specifics of when they migrated, what age they are, which parents and guardians are, there with them if they have any at all, and how their schooling may have differed according to age and culture previously from coming to your district. And this all brings us to an asset-based mindset. This guide that we're referencing today really brings us insight on resources to provide to families, but we must not forget the resources and insight that families can bring to the table as well. There may be times when it is difficult to engage with families, especially due to distance and also time. That can really include anything from transportation to, work hours, just anything that really implicates and impacts this, attempt to connect. And adopting this asset-based mindset to view the situation really provides background and the groundwork for a constructive analysis of the situation. This approach really helps to refrain from placing blame on families, and instead seeks to understand the broader context that influences their level of engagement. And we do recognize, of course, that barriers may exist, ranging from socioeconomic factors to institutional challenges, and this all hinders families from being actively involved in their children's educational journeys. And this acknowledgement that we're using as an asset-based acknowledgement really fosters empathy, as well as shifts away from the opposite, a deficit-based perspective on family needs. Instead of what they're lacking, what are people bringing to the table? Why aren't people bringing things to the table? And how can we make sure together that this is all happening for each other? So lastly, within process conditions are also collaboration and also interaction. And a large portion of this really comes down to recognizing the power imbalance that exists between many immigrant families and the systems that they're all struggling to navigate. And when working with immigrant families, we must proactively empower them and share decision-making power. It really all comes down to really balancing out this dynamic of folks having power and folks having all the power versus any folks that don't have any or are struggling to maintain equilibrium. So recognizing this and addressing power dynamics that may contribute to families feeling excluded from decision-making processes is very crucial. And giving folks back power can mean creating spaces for their voices, in the most simplistic of ways, or inviting them personally in accessible ways if they have feedback. And I'll give an example. For example, if a student is an English learner, teachers can let parents know about resources available to support this learning and encourage them to access it. Schools also can empower families by inviting them to join PACs, such as LPACs, which FCSN does a lot of work on. So if folks have any questions about LPACs or how to integrate LPACs into their systems, you are more than welcome to ask us any questions, shoot us an email, or also just ask us in person after this webinar. Creating spaces for folks to interact and work on issues together is also paramount to just really fine-tuning styles of communication and discovering what works and what doesn't. Seeing sessions with parents as a co-learning opportunity and centralizing their involvement creates an opportunity to make meaningful exchanges and to really go back to the beginning of this presentation, develop this relational trust. We're moving on to the next slide. You will see the same sort of frame, but instead of process conditions, we're looking at organizational conditions. And there are 2 images of families below. So in terms of seeing this framework through the lens of an organization, what is possible? To sustain the practices that we've all mentioned earlier, and there are so many, there must be active removal of barriers and infrastructural support. So we begin with the systemic view. These initiatives must be wholly embraced by leaders across the institution. And this is demonstrated by Dr. Mapp's leadership theory that you can also view on her website. These initiatives and this theory really discuss how important it is for organizational leaders to establish this tone that is consistent on educational change. And this tone that leaders set should really express this clear, very clear desire to include immigrant families in partnership efforts. And this commitment should be more than words. It requires providing the necessary resources to making it happen, providing the space throughout the entire organization. And by doing so, leaders create an environment where the involvement of immigrant families is not just encouraged, but becomes this fundamental aspect of the organization's identity and goals. We move on to the second bullet point, which is integrating systems. And more on this, critical thinking on family engagement on this level should really just be integrated into all activities. This includes school plans, initiatives, events, and also strategies. So in other words, districts and schools must critically examine how they are including the needs and voices of immigrant families and view this as a necessity, similar to how physical accessibility in buildings must be considered to be compliant with ADA law due to not only legal necessity, but also to normalize this sort of necessity for everybody. We are now moving on to the next slide. The title is Best Practices for Partnering with Families. You will see a list of bullet points as well as a small image to the right of folks holding hands. So now, after discussing this dual capacity framework and how that relates to immigrant families, we are now following up with a series of best practices for partnering with families. During this process, we are keeping in mind that each classroom, school, district, best practices, quote unquote, are going to look different because of, again, the number of immigrant students you have, how big your classroom is, what waves of newcomers you're experiencing. If it's, like 1 kiddo in your classroom, that's a newcomer, up to 10 kiddos in your classroom, as well as what your resources look like and what you're working with. So this list that you see on the screen is not exhaustive. I'll just give folks 5 minutes right now to reflect on what best practices for you looks like and to write them down somewhere that is easily accessible to you. While we're doing that, in terms of, making sure that folks can visualize and really understand what is going on, I'm just also going to be reading the bullet points again while I'm starting the timer for 5 minutes. So feel free to put me on mute if you like to just sit and think. But I am going to start saying all of the bullet points now, and I will let everybody know when it's time to come back. The first bullet point is making the time to get to know families. Secondly, ensuring that curricula are culturally responsive and implemented. Thirdly, creating a welcoming and immigrant-friendly organizational environment. Fourthly, sharing power with immigrant families. Fifth, informing and training your teams on the needs of families. Sixth, strengthening the role of schools as community resources. Seventh, getting to know and partnering with community organizations. Eighth, staying informed on immigration-related policies. And lastly, ninth, mitigating language barriers. Everybody has around 4 minutes left, and I will go quiet to let everybody just think and ruminate. Folks have around 2-ish minutes left. Okay, we have 1 more minute for folks to just kind of wrap up their thoughts and come back whenever they feel ready to do so. All right. So let's just come back together, regroup. And while we're regrouping for one final time, let's break out into different rooms to discuss what these practices may look like for you, things that you have been reflecting on the last 5 minutes. And not all of them need to be discussed. So please choose 2 to 3 that your school is utilizing. Any examples that you can share, or that what your school would like to utilize and discuss with your peers on what that process is like for you when you're trying to think through the conditions of everything and steps to it. A Jamboard that Mahima has shared is in the comments in the chat box. It is the same Jamboard, but if you go onto the second slide, you will see another space open for you to paste your notes. So I'll give folks around 10 to 15-ish minutes to introduce each other, share best practices in the context of your own experiences, and then we'll come back together to discuss what we've learned from all of this reflecting. Please also use this time to, if you want to network with each other, learn from each other, put down your contact information, anything that is going to be helpful for you, your school's learning process. And one last thing to note as well is that when you're writing down notes on a Jamboard and you're seeking for support, please put your name and your district on the notes so that we can follow up with you if you would like support from us. This will be helpful for conversations. We can either follow up with you either afterwards through email or through a call if you'd like to. But please remember to do so if you are also seeking support from FCNS. I am going to stop sharing my screen.
Sorry, I'm just opening up the room so all of you will be assigned to the rooms and we'll head there automatically.
Yes, thank you, Mahima. Okay, I just put myself back in. I am going to stop recording. I think we're waiting on one more room. Yes. Welcome back. We are waiting on one more room, and then we can just chat a little bit about things that folks have been discussing. while they were in their respective, oh, okay, room 2 is back. Great. We can chat, as I was saying, about things that folks have been discussing in the last 15 minutes. And then together we can look at a couple of the posts that folks have put down on the Jamboard. Before I do that, though, is there anybody that would like to volunteer their voice for their group and just say a couple of thoughts?
Yeah, I can say a couple of things. We just, our group, we talked a little bit about just culturally how some students that come from other countries may put more of an emphasis on, say, like working on the family farm. So it could be a norm for a parent to take their child out of school or let their child miss school to help around the house or on the farm. But here in this country, that's not acceptable reason to miss school. So really being able to find that balance with caregivers, families, parents to understand that the importance of attending school and the reasons are few and far between why the kids should miss school, but also that cultural competence piece so that teachers within the classroom can respond in a culturally competent way.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for sharing. That's all very true. So what I'm hearing is efforts to really mitigate the gap between participation and parents understanding or families understanding the need for academics, for the kiddos, while being really cognizant of the cultural piece that is involved, as well as any necessary basic needs that aren't being met, and how it's related to a variety of all of the bullet points that we see on the Jamboard. I'm also seeing a couple more notes that are being put onto the screen, so thank you for folks that are still adding on. Is there anybody else that would like to lend their voice?
I'm Catherine from Canton, and I
Hello.
put this out to the group. I'm always looking for more creative ways to welcome and engage folks. In our group, we talked, someone had shared about some pre-visits with the building, meeting with staff. I know we've started to put together some welcome packets. Yeah, always looking for other ways to bring families, together, but also to welcome just the new students. We've contemplated putting up bulletin boards, and not just our ML population, but just new students in general, a picture of them with some of their strengths, interests, things like that, so that everybody can kind of get to know them a little bit. So if anyone has any ideas, all ears.
Thank you, Catherine. And that's amazing. That would be so cute for the kiddos. I love that. But yeah, if anybody has any suggestions or thoughts or experiences that they'd like to share, feel free to put them in the chat. And yeah, feel free to put your contact information in too if you want to network a little bit, get to know about other connections. But thank you, Catherine. That is very cute. I find that when we're discussing things about integrating, family engagement into the structure of the school systems, we also forget to, remind each other that it's sometimes just nice to also put in fun little activities for the kiddos too. So that's great. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Okay. I'm gonna take that as a maybe and then move on. I'm just gonna, just to make sure that we're all cognizant of time, I am going to just read off a couple of the notes before moving on. So here we have notes on cultural competence of staff, bringing local religious leaders into school site councils. Really excellent point. Individual schools are integrating immigrant stories into classwork. LPACs, resource fair for LPACs, ideas for welcoming new families, pre-visits of the buildings, meeting with staff, welcome packets, need more. I'm assuming that's from Catherine. And lastly, somebody mentioned wanting to hire families to act as cultural brokers, but there is also, as always, the issue of finding the funds for it. Thank you all, and thank you, Mahima, for sharing. Hopefully that conversation was fruitful. And for the last couple minutes of our time, I would like to reshare my screen and show everybody the last bits of what we're here to talk about. There we go. And let me know if anything looks a little bit iffy on your part. Oh, I don't know why this keeps happening. I'm just gonna go through really quickly. Okay. So we end with thinking about solutions together. And while thinking about all of this, we are examining these issues of different stakeholder identities. While we are school leaders and educators, we are also a part of a community. So above you, you will see a slide on solutions for all stakeholders, which we all are. From the left to the right, you'll see school leaders, educators, but more importantly, neighbors, because it's not only a two-way street between school leaders and educators speaking to families. We're also looking at this as a holistic community issue. So we're speaking of neighbors as ourselves for folks welcoming newcomers into our fold. For the sake of time, I'll just invite everybody to look at this, but I'll just read off a couple. For school leaders, this solutions might look like developing relationships and partnering with local organizations, inviting and welcoming connected organizations to host events at schools or anywhere that is an official building. For educators, it might be consulting with families for needs without making assumptions and being mindful of the academic needs of students and immigrant families, incorporating immigrant narratives and experiences into the curriculum. And as a community, as neighbors, this may look like, being aware of the vulnerability that our immigrant newcomers are facing as they're entering a new system, creating considerate and welcoming community spaces, really thinking about relational trust, understanding the context that we mentioned today, and also staying informed on relevant immigration policies, particularly local ones. We end today really with this call to action. What is this next step that you will be taking to ensure that your classroom, school, and district are on the right path to partnering with immigrant families in an inclusive way? What aspect of the framework is your community doing well on, and what can be improved? How are, lastly, the specifics of your students' backgrounds going to contribute to how you consider these solutions? Either ones that we've mentioned just now, ones that we haven't, and ones that we're brainstorming together. And I just want to invite everybody for the last minute-ish of our conversation to just really, put in the chat any conversations that you want to keep, moving onwards with folks that you've met in the breakout rooms, any questions for us. And these are the list of seminars that are coming up that are still open registration. You can find them on the website that you registered for this one. And I'm not going to read them out because folks have probably already seen this, but these are all available resources for you. We welcome any feedback that you have for us, and not only about this webinar, but about any other upcoming resources that you'd like to know more about. And now that we have folks' contact information, we will also be sending resources out to you as we develop them. But yeah, this concludes the end of our 2-hour webinar today. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and to stop recording.